February 26, 2022. Watching NTD News. It's a replay. For the first time, I've never heard of Berlinale bears. They apparently are ready for some awards ceremony that happens in Berlin. I've never heard of it. Again, there's not really much talk ever. In fact, there is no talk ever on the Rabbit Ear station. I have to think if I've ever seen Merkel on there. I don't think so. I think the expanded digital package is, but again, it would just be a photo portrait of her in photography, not painted, as a mention. Again, not many names get through. It mentions that. Then it mentions a hand-painted painting of the boy in blue in New York in the 19th triangle of 19th century for my 78th year in a circle arrival. It is for crop circles. I have not been culturally, say, awakened to my heritage. Certainly not to anything in the fine arts department. There was, when I was younger, they had taken us to the Natural History Museum once, and they took us to the symphony once, which I remember fondly of. But as far as going to different gala or galleries, different museums, I don't have a memory of it. I also, on free time or spare time, there's just been no direction on free and spare time, just not knowing where and what to cling on to or to look for. But the most famous names in certain circles are a completely unbeknownst event in mine during this time period. They just made mention of it on NTD News, or I would have never heard of it. But again, these are the painted. I know I look like an old hag, but The Hague is where the girl with the pearl earring is, and I know that is, or I believe it to be, over in the European section, borderline of whatever. And that gets confusing from Iber to Siberia and how to label that, because I don't know how other people make patterns and sounds, so I dare not, whatever. I only mark my own journal at the moment for my understanding, or understate at the time, since it's been quite confusing.
For the Bear statue since 1951. The Berlin Film Festival, also known as Berlinale, will open in person on February 10th and end February 20th. It's the 72nd edition this year, and 18 movies will compete. The event was entirely online last year due to the pandemic. This year, some pandemic restrictions are in place, including half capacity for the live screenings.
I never heard of
French
it.
fashion
Doesn't
house
mean
Chanel
that others.
has just finished its haute couture show in Paris. This time, the stunner was not a model in the traditional sense. The show started with a horse hitting the runway. Riding the horse was Charlotte Kisaragi, niece of Prince Albert of Monaco. She's a competitive jumper and Chanel brand ambassador. Wearing a Chanel jacket made of black tweed,
did not know what an ambassador is. Heard the word, but I don't know the function in whatever it is. But I find it interesting. It is a catwalk, and there's a horse on a catwalk.
She rode a few laps around a catwalk that resembled a horse training ring. The rest of the models, this time on foot, then took to the runway. The idea for the show came from Chanel's creative director, Virginie Riard, as a tribute to the brand's founder, Coco Chanel. The design style...
Again, I don't know what the purpose of the fashion show or decor is. I don't know how it began. It's not an industry. It's something luxurious, which in the state of New York, when I arrived in a fallout shelter before transport to Long Island, it was not something spoken of or something that there was an invitation to go and learn about.
It combines both the casual elegance of Coco and the flamboyant fun of Karl Lagerfeld, an icon of Chanel haute couture in the 1980s. London welcomes one of the world's most iconic old master paintings for a limited run at the National Gallery.
Old master
The Blue
paintings.
Boy, by British painter Gainsborough, left the gallery a century ago, leaving behind a saddened British public. NTD's Neil Woodrow.
So it alerts me it went from somewhere in either London or Britain. They're usually associated with one another in this area whenever they're spoken of. I don't know why. To America, but in California, in Huntington, on the Huntington side, so the Pacific side. And now they've sent the painting back. I know there's significance. I believe there's significance in it. I just don't know what, because I have not been able to find a forever family member.
Attends the opening in London.
The Blue Boy by Thomas Gainsborough returns to the National Gallery 100 years since it was sold to American railway magnate Henry E. Huntington. It's set among other work by Gainsborough and paintings by Sir Anthony Van Dyck, whom Gainsborough admired and
That's why I saved my
emulated.
son.
The painting had become world famous by
Je m'appelle
1921
Anthony.
and sold for a record sum. It was in January the following year that it began its journey to the United States, leaving behind a saddened British public. At the time, shortly after the First World War, reviewers made the analogy between the grief over lost youth on the Western Front, followed by yet another loss, that of the Blue Boy. The painting found its home at the Huntington Library, Art Museum and Botanical Gardens in California, and has never been sent out on loan since. Until now. Christina Nielsen, director of the Art Museum at Huntington, says it's unlikely to happen again.
This is the only time we've considered lending it seriously. We just finished a 2-year conservation project. We know that the painting is in great condition and visually looks spectacular. So 100 years to the day, we have him back on view for the public in the UK, and we're thrilled to be doing so.
Nielsen says the Blue Boy has become one of the most beloved old master paintings in America.
We receive about 1 million visitors a year, and virtually everyone who comes to the Huntington makes a beeline to see the Blue Boy.
This full-length portrait was created during Gainsborough's time in Bath between 1759 to 74, a period when the artist's style and practice changed dramatically. Christine Riding, the curator of the exhibition, talks about this influential time of Gainsborough's life.
And there's this great moment when the likes of Van Dyck were kind of revealed to him through private collections, and that absolutely is the case in a very famous group painting, enormous work of art by Van Dyck at Wilton House. Does seem to have been a real lightning rod for so many artists of the period.
Riding says Van Dyck could represent the human form and give it an innate sense of authority of power.
Exactly the same thing happens in the Blue Boy. It's pared right down to the figure with this idyllic landscape in the background. Who knows where that is? And suddenly you're really focusing on this figure, and you're focusing on the pose, the expression, such as you do have with Van Dyck, but equally you're looking at the brushworks. So it's a performance both in terms of the figure, but it's a performance in terms of the artistry, in terms of the paintiness of it.
The identity of the Blue Boy was never known, which writing says has allowed the painting itself to wander through the centuries and be of inspiration to subsequent artists.
You have until May 15th to come and admire the original and much copied work. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, London.
Scientists now believe Saturn's innermost.
That May 15th date lines up with paperwork that was collected in the Standard and Poor area to tie in my whatever for Anthony 2012. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxies, broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. Those are the things, the details of humanity that I would have loved to have learned firsthand, people I would have loved to have spent time with and learned from. But again, it has not been, easy finding even that, like they're painted, but finding the connections to get some people talk about social climbing, like elevators, escalators to the top floor. Granted, but what happens if it's been withheld, purposely or otherwise? The results are what they are. And I haven't been able to find an elevator or an escalator to any level of where I need to be. I did go with a girl that I had met, Lynn Lackner. She had a brother who had some kind of weasel or ferret or something. And she invited me to go to Rutgers University. I had no idea what that was in New Jersey. I went there. I have no memory of the entire trip. I was there. I just don't know what the conversation was and who was there. That's on the Atlantic side. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. And it's January 26th, 2022.